Hello, Nonprofit Connect members. As part of our coffee break series, we sit down every month to enjoy a cup of coffee with a nonprofit professional to learn about them, their work, and to highlight our sector overall. Today, I'm so excited to welcome Jitem Taylor from the Porch Alliance. Jitem, welcome. How are you today?
I'm great, outside of the heat.
It is a hot one all of a sudden, right?
We just had sweaters in the middle of the night, like 2-3 weeks ago, and now it's like 104. Okay.
Right, but we will adapt and overcome as nonprofit professionals do. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and I'm really excited to have you here because, am I right in remembering, did you start working at Porch Alliance during the pandemic?
I did, actually. I started in November, right before Thanksgiving, and let's just say it has been interesting.
So I'm curious, first off, could you tell us a little bit about the Porch Alliance?
Yes, Porch Alliance is a nonprofit that's 22 years old, and it started with some members from Village Presbyterian Church coming into the Ivanhoe neighborhood, knocking on doors and just saying, how can we help you? And from that, we now do early learning programs through Early Head Start. We also do youth programs after school and in summer, and just work with the community as a whole.
That's great. So are you mostly in the Ivanhoe neighborhood? Or?
We are not. East Side is East Side. Now, I've heard East Side defined in so many different ways, like east of Truce, east of 71, however you define it.
Got it. So mostly we can picture like East Kansas City, Missouri, Ivanhoe neighborhood around in that area.
Yes.
So you've been executive director there since November.
Yes.
I would love to hear your perspective on leading through a global pandemic. What was the most challenging part? What were the silver linings?
Okay. The challenging part is that I'm an introvert by nature and like to be alone in general, but very much love people. And so the challenging is getting to know a new staff during pandemic while everyone was working from home. I would say probably I started building relationships with the staff probably at the start of the new year. I don't know if it was just what New Year brings, but a lot of folks are just like, you know what, we're just going to come back into the office. And that is when I had the opportunity to actually get to know a few of them a little bit more.
Thank you for sharing that. I love that. It's so hard coming in as a new executive director. What advice would you have for someone who is thinking about becoming an executive director or just stepping into that role?
I think by trade, for someone who is becoming a new executive director, in nonprofit in general, I think a lot of us are very much like nurturers, caregivers. And so what I would remind you is what many people have reminded me over the years. My background's in social work. And so they've always said, make sure, and like a plane, you put on your mask first. I am stubborn. I'm stubborn. So I'm the type who's like, no, what I will do is I know I can hold my breath and make sure everyone else is taken care of. And so with that, I have learned during the pandemic, you can't hold your breath because you have to take in consideration your own mental, physical, emotional well-being. And though it may not present, this last year may not present in ways that all of us are familiar, it still somehow has affected each and every one of us. And so one thing I would tell a new exec coming into the nonprofit sector, take care of yourself. Have a self-care plan. It sounds cliche. It does not have to look like spas and candles and smelly bubble baths, but what it can look like is just you taking time to reflect and have some time to shut off.
That was like a really lovely reset moment, right? Thank you for sharing that. I'm really curious, could you share with us a moment that you're proudest of with your work?
I think it's hard to actually have time to reflect on those moments that you feel more proud. But what I felt proud of is there became, even my transition from the organization I was at previous to here, there became a point in time that some of the young people that I taught over the years actually started applying for jobs to work with me. And so my most proud moment would have been realizing like, oh, these are my babies, and the babies are in adults, but they also would like to serve and give back to the community. That's my most proudest moment, because though I know there are many variables that probably led them to come and wanting to apply for the positions, I know that somewhere along the line, like I was one of the seeds that were a part of that pathway.
Absolutely. That's That's really touching. Thank you. I think a lot of times, you're exactly right. We don't take the time to reflect in the moment. And so it's that stuff that happened a long time ago that you can actually see the results of kids you worked with, your babies, your little kids now want to work with you. It's like, that's got to feel really good to see that happening. And now at Front Porch Alliance, how does it feel to be the executive where you're not on those front lines as much, where you're not seeing little Susan in the pigtails? How do you kind of balance that, or how does that feel at this stage in your career?
So there becomes a moment in life where you can't have your hands in everything. And you have to trust those around you to continue the work that you have envisioned, that you've walked through your own self. Like, you have to let it go and let them, that next generation, come up and carry the torch that you once carried.
I love that. So it's not just about the kids that you're serving, it's also about the staff that you're growing up behind you. I'm really curious, things in this country were definitely shaken up by COVID-19 and also by the murder of George Floyd. So I'm really curious, how did your organization walk through, well, I guess you weren't at Front Porch Alliance then, were you? So that's like kind of a weird question to ask.
I'm not sure how the organization, I think they came out with a statement like many of the organizations have over the country. But one way that I'm taking into consideration is just like my approach, me being a woman of color, me being from the Kansas City metro area, and understanding that there are systemic racism and oppressions that are happening all the time. And to being mindful of like, how do we have accountability, not only in our work, but with each other, to make sure that we won't perpetuate those things.
Are there some things or some approaches that you have at Front Porch Alliance that help you analyze some of those like nasty systemic power hierarchies that we have?
Because I have a lot of new staff at the moment, one of the things that we are implementing is just to have our own like quarterly book club. And so one of the things have been reading is The Poor House, just to say a lot of the work we do is centered around community. So that's housing, food, education, safety.
What a beautiful summary of like, we're trying to build that culture of how we want to acknowledge and uplift that which is around us. That's beautiful, because like, how do you build that culture, right?
I think it happens organically.
Really?
Because I have a lot of new staff, I think they're all phenomenal, one. And two, I think providing a safe space, if there's anything, I think I'm just providing a safe space for people to be their authentic selves. And just saying, how do we collectively say and or stand in that which we believe? And I don't know what that looks like for the organization, but I'm willing to have those conversations and figure out how we can work together to build that.
I love that. It's very like grassroots. I'm curious, if you could say one thing to all of Kansas City, what would be your call to action?
Build more relationships would be my call to action. What we realized even in the nonprofit sector is like, as we were going through this pandemic, as we were going through hardships, even the funding industry would say nonprofit agencies are the ones who actually assisted in helping the community, the entire community, by being that bridge between resources and the need. And so what I would say for our call to action is continue to build those relationships, not only with those who we serve, but walk with people to understand what's happening in the moment so we can be adaptable and shift when we need to.
I have learned so much from talking with you just in this short time. Do you have any other, like, the best advice you've ever gotten?
I think one of the things I've learned, and there was something that it was even said to me in high school, time flies, right? But what has been the pivot this last year has been time is like elusive. Like, there's sometimes this last year seems like it's been 5 years, and there's other times where it seems like it's been a blink of an eye. And so with that said, focus on that which you love, that gives you life, because when you're happy and you're doing good work, those around you also benefited from it as well.
Jitem, thank you so much for being here with us today. I really appreciate you sharing your stories and your wisdom, and I'm so glad we have nonprofit professionals like you who are dedicated to the craft, who are now not only raising up the little ones that were in your youth programs to like be your staff, to be the next generation of Jitems. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your stories today.
Thank you for having me. I think sharing stories is a part of the way we both grow internally, but as a community.
Thank you so much, Shatem. And thank you to all of our members for tuning in. Remember, we are better together. We'll see you next time. Cheers.